Lorraine from Nuestra Voz Latina. How are you, Danny and you?
How are you?
Bien. Hola,
I'm
Lorraine.
good. Muy bien. Happy to be here with you guys.
Same here.
So, as you reflect back to all the roles that you have played throughout your career, what lessons have you taken from those roles that have helped you in your role in Hotel Cocaine today? How has it shaped you to be the actor you are today in those roles?
I mean, I think, I think every stitch is a stitch in the fabric of an actor's career. You try to vary it as much as you can, and then you decide the parts depending on who's involved and whose hands it's in, and so I think everything feeds everything. I also paint. I'm a photographer and I'm a musician. So everything feeds everything. It's not, I don't think one takes away from the other. I see everything as one, orb. So I think everything in life feeds everything. Meeting everyone here. I think it's a succession of events for me. That's how think I think that's how we arrive at where we are today.
But Yul's a Renaissance man. I mean, Yul does everything incredibly well. For me, it's talking about different characters and how it sort of leads now to Roman Compte, the general manager of the Mutiny Club and Hotel. I've played characters who were on the right side of the law. In fact, they were the law. And now, I've in, two successive shows, whether it's Mayans MC or Hotel Cocaine, playing characters sort of on, you could potentially consider an outlaw, right? What I find, and I think this goes to the heart of your question, the sort of through line for the characters is with great writing, whether it's Meredith Steam on Cold Case, whether it's Warren Light on Law and Order SVU, whether it's Elgin James on Mayans, or Chris Brancato now at Hotel Cocaine. All of those showrunners are fantastic at developing a character who rides the line between being, on the right side of the law and a potential criminality, right? And so all of those characters, whether it was, Scotty Valens on Cold Case, where he had some anger issues and would go back and forth between being able to control that, or Nick Amaro, who also was going back and forth between being able to control his anger and his frustrations and whatnot within his job and within his family. And you can say similar things about Miguel Galindo, and now we arrive at Roman Compte, who also has to ride that line. And so it's just like what Yul says, there is a building and a learning from each experience, especially when the writing is so dialed in and so challenging for an actor, which is the best thing that we can have, is that sort of range to be able to carve through a performance and go back and forth between scenes that you're like, I really love this guy. I could absolutely see myself doing exactly what he's doing. And the very next scene, you're like, how could you choose to do that? I hate this person. Right. And so that's really the currency that actors love to deal in. Yul Vázquez. That's my short answer. I'm not saying that because he's here, but he is. He's right here.
He's right there.
And I was just playing with his ear. But the reality is that the first phone call I got about Hotel Cocaine came from Yul. Yul and I, there are not a lot of Cuban Americans in Hollywood, right? And so whenever I would go to, an event, and I'd meet other Cuban Americans. We'd eventually land on, have you met Yul Vázquez? And I'd say, no, I haven't met him. I know of him. We have mutual friends, and he's a fantastic actor, but I have not yet met him. Or I'd go to a set, and somebody in the crew or somebody in the cast would be like, well, you're Cuban American. Have you met Yul? And we'd have the same conversation. I love his work. I haven't met him. And then we happened to meet on Law and Order SVU. And we became fast friends. It's like when you meet somebody that you feel like you've known your entire life. And I'm not talking about like your entire acting life. I'm talking about like, were you at my 15s? Were you at like my baptism? Because I feel like you must have been in the Catholic Church with us, right?
I was a priest.
Ooh.
Wow.
Anyway, let's move on. The phone call where Yul calls me and he says, look, I've been working on this show, The Godfather of Harlem, with Forrest Whitaker, the fantastic Forrest Whitaker, and with Chris Brancato, who's the co-creator of Narcos. And there's this show set in Miami, 1978. It's called Hotel Cocaine. It's based on the mutiny, and we'd be playing brothers. And I said, I'm in. And he was like, well, maybe you should read the script. And I'm like, wait, maybe I should read the script. Maybe I should read the script. But that's the short answer to your question is once Yul kind of set that up, I was already, the momentum and the inertia towards doing this was already in motion.
I mean, pretty much the same for me. I mean, Danny really was the only choice really for this. It was too perfect. But you know, sometimes when something is so perfect, it doesn't wind up happening.
Right.
You know, it's like this is a no-brainer, and then suddenly if it doesn't happen. But this was one of those times where the no-brainer happened the way it was supposed to happen. I absolutely love working with Danny, and he knows that is the truth. I know that I can stand there with him and we can get through any scene, no matter what the journey of the scene is, and we work around it and we figure it out, and we get to the end of the scene. I know when he opens his mouth, I'm going to believe everything he says. That they sound like simple, obvious things, but not always the case. Not always the case. And I always knew with Danny, I was going to have a guy that was there today, not a guy who decided how he was going to do this 3 weeks ago. You know what I mean? It was like, rehearsed it in the mirror, because that's one thing that makes me insane. You know, when I get somebody, I'm like, no matter what you do, this person is going to do the same thing because they've locked themselves into this thing. And we figured out this flow with this whole thing, and we improvised a lot of things, and we had the freedom from Chris Brancato, Michael Paines, and Guillermo Navarro, who was a huge part of the design and the brains and the engine of this show, and encouraged us to be like, you guys know this world better than any of us is going to know. You know what it is to be in Miami, from a Cuban from Miami. So that's what we did. That's really what we did, and I think we brought a lot of ourselves into the thing, more so than I think I've ever done.
I mean, you're talking to a musician artist in Yul. I mean, he would come at the scenes with the same words, but in a totally different way. So to be present and to be able to play jazz with him all the time. And, a lot of the script is written in English. And we know, as many Cuban Americans know, and many Latinos know, that we don't speak in English all the time.
Correct.
Our probably chosen language, our first language, is Spanglish. And so we would manipulate some of the script to have the same intention, to have the same wording, but to be able to go back and forth fluidly in Spanish to give the authenticity of what you would hear, not only in that time period, but modern day Miami.